Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Freeing Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Dukeman, and today I have with me Mr. Aaron Thorpe. And today we're going to be sharing Aaron's story about his journey through PTSD and the recovery, what kind of brought that on, and how he got through it. So, Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, certainly. Glad to have you. What's a little background? Who are you? What do you do? Tell us about yourself.
Well, the cliff notes of the background is, I was raised very religiously in the Christian religion. I joined the Marines when I was very young to kind of get away from a lot of bad stuff. That's where I got PTSD, was combat operations in Iraq. But I came back. I was a father. I had met a girl. We fell in love. We had kids. I had about an 18-year marriage, and in that time, it was there was a lot that happened that brought me to today, which is helping other people with trauma, PTSD, any kind of things that they're experiencing that they feel like they need to heal from. And so that's kind of what I do now. Is people call me in kind of their hardest moments, or people will work with me and just try and find those trigger points, or those things that maybe we don't even know it's holding us back. We have these kind of general ideas or mannerisms, so to speak, when we interact with others. And sometimes we don't know that we've got a thorn in our foot, and we've just always walked with a limp and just didn't know why. So I kind of help people, hey, why do you walk with a limp, so to speak? Not literally, but yeah, that's a lot of what I do. I like just helping people. I used to be an IT guy. I was a really good IT guy, and I didn't like it anymore. I loved helping people. I loved, hey, do this with Excel. And oh my God, you just saved, 3 days worth of work. I love that. But what I found was I loved that more than I loved, fixing computers. So I was like, well, fuck. Well, sorry, I don't know if you want me to not curse on your channel, but
No, we're good. We're good. We're just letting her flow.
I got to the point where, like, well, why can't I just help people fix their past? A lot of my journey, I was seeing in my life the the effects of my actions, which then led me to go search for the cause. I did that a little backwards. I realize that now. But that's kind of what I do now, is I just try and help people any way I can, even if it's, hey, I need help with X, Y, and Z, and I know nothing about that. Like, I'm going to find you someone in my network, somebody I know, like, this guy does, that girl does that though,
Yeah.
Go live your best life, whatever that means. I love that. I love that. Souls on fire. I like lighting people up.
Yeah, definitely. That's good stuff. So you went into the military, you joined the Marine Corps at a young age. What year did that happen?
That was February 2003. So I think we invaded Iraq in, it was March or April. And the reason I don't know that is I remember being in boot camp, and the drill instructor walked in and he said, we just invaded Iraq, so you are all now wartime Marines. And so there's this, like, very ominous, like, oh crap, now there's going to be some stuff we're going to experience. And when I finished boot camp, got back from leave, I got put in 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Marine Division. They're known as the Thundering Third, the most deployed. Like, we're not, I wasn't special forces. I'm not claiming that. But of the infantry battalions, they were considered the most deployed. When things pop off and you needed Marine Corps infantry, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines was going to be there. And so I'm certainly not putting down any of the other units, but we were stationed up in the Haditha Dam. We patrolled Al Asad, Haditha, just like these little nowhere towns. There wasn't much going on. We'd patrol around. The locals were standoffish. I even talked to an English professor which I didn't understand kind of what he was telling me at the time, because I was, 19-year-old kid that was like, dude, shut up. I don't want to hear any of this stuff. It was mostly quiet. Like we had a few interactions, a roadside bomb shot at a few times, but nothing really crazy. And it was in 2004. It was April 10th, 2004. The CSOR, I want to say it was the end of March or the very beginning of April in 2004, that there were 4 American contractors that were sent through Fallujah without security, no real armament, no attaché, nothing. They just like, hey, jumped in a car and tried to drive through Fallujah. What people didn't know about Fallujah, and I didn't know at the time, was that nobody ever controlled that city. That was always controlled by the Mujahideen, which was this, organization of fighters. So why they were sent through that city why they were sent through that city in the first place is, a conspiracy theorist question, dream question kind of thing. But what ended up happening, they died, they got attacked. They were kind of put on display in the way they were killed. And so the US military sent in 7 Marine battalions to wipe out the Mujahideen. So that was 30 days of combat. And coming from, I say I grew up in like, a Christian organization. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, which that group is very much a cult that, kind of fears you into staying, so to speak. But they instilled this idea that everything's always going to be perfect, right? Jesus is going to save you. God freaking loves everyone. There's nothing to be afraid of. And now as a 19-year-old, I said the combat operations or the ceasefire for Fallujah ended on April 10th, 2004. April 11th was my birthday. And I'm in Fallujah, Iraq, after, knocking on people's doors, preaching about how Jesus is going to save the world. And there's just absolute chaos going on. So that was a very stark difference in the way I saw the world and just kind of my outlook. It made me question absolutely everything. Like, dude, there's no God. There's no way God would allow this stuff. It turned me very hateful. I was always the kid that, if we got in a disagreement, I'd never throw a punch. I've never been in a fist fight before. I've never been in any kind of altercation before I joined the Marine Corps. Like, I'd always talk my way out of fights. I'd make everyone laugh. And, now I'm kind of like this completely opposite person I got in trouble a few times at work, for being overly aggressive. Like, that was part of that PTSD. If someone, said, hey, fuck you, pal. Like, I remember he was my friend too. I didn't understand why I did this, but I was making fun of him. I was being a bully because he had like shaved wrong. And I was like, it's out of place, because he tried to, center something. And so I was making fun of this guy. He says, flips me the bird. And so I wrap him up in like a headlock, and I'm like, don't you ever say that to me again, like all mad. And it's like, man, I got a problem. Like, that's not normal interactions. And that's not interactions, that's not the way I used to interact with my friends. So I tried the typical VA thing. I had 2 counselors a week. I had those pill bottles, or not the pill bottles, but the little daily trackers. I had 2 of those things that were absolutely full. Like, I had to stuff them down to close them. And I had to take, every day I took 2 sections or regiments of pills to keep me non-fighty and to put me to sleep. And then I saw 2 therapists throughout the week. Just kind of, it messed me up bad. PTSD, it hit me hard. And so I just kind of lollygagged through life, not lollygag, but, got a job. I was like, okay, I got to do the dad thing. I got to get the 401k. I got to have a job. I got to get a career, got to get a house, 3.5 kids. Just kind of went along with it. And it wasn't until my kid was 5 years old, and I was telling him to clean his room. I was like, hey, Drake, clean your room. He's like, right, Dad, just a minute. He's coloring this picture. And And so I start getting very impatient very quickly. Drake, clean your room right now. He's like, okay, Dad, just a minute. He's like scribbling faster. And I snapped, and I was like, grabbed his picture. I ripped it up. I was like, clean your room. Marine Dad comes out. And as you can imagine, he fell on the floor just in the fetal position crying. And there was this moment like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I acting like that to my kids? So that was my other trauma. My grandfather was a mean drunk, used to beat the piss out of my dad. My dad did the same thing when he had kids, because that's all he ever learned. Then when he found the religion, he didn't beat us so much, because we start having marks when we'd go to church, and he's like, okay, well, I can't beat him anymore. So he was just mean. So I realized though that I'm being my dad, and like I hated my dad when I was younger. Like, he was an asshole, and I was like, now I'm doing that to my kids, like, how do I, and that's what really started a lot of my growth. That was that interaction between me and Drake was like, that changed everything. And it made me start really questioning, like, okay, well, what are these pills doing for me? Like, they put me to sleep. They make me groggy. They make me not really responsive to things. Yeah, I can go stand in a McDonald's hamburger line and, put a stamp of pickle on everything that passes by me, but I'm not really growing much. So I got pretty fighty with a lot of my with a lot of my therapists. I challenge them on things. Like, oh, okay, they'd go, okay, what's the worst thing you ever experienced? It's like, why would you ask me that? Like, why would you sit me in a room and ask me to open Pandora's box and scream at it just to send me out your door? Like, what's the value of this?
Let's tear open those wounds and throw salt in them and send you on your way.
Yeah, and we've got some pills for when they hurt.
Yep.
It's like, dude, this is insane. This is so insane. Like, I don't understand the goal here of, just getting someone in a room and being like, all right, let's cut your wounds open. And then, when you're freaking crying and bleeding on the floor, I'm gonna call time and I'll send you down to the pharmacy and they'll give you some stuff to go sleep. It's like, this is useless. What did help though, in 2009, the VA had this, they had this program where it was a 7-week inpatient program. So I actually went down to Denver at the VA hospital, the 7th floor, one of the wings. You stayed there for 7 weeks, and it was 7 weeks with other people with combat trauma, PTSD. And you stayed in this hospital. You got weekends off, but all day, every day, you're going through treatment, therapy, something, and you're around other warriors. You're around other people who have experienced similar things. And that changed a lot for me. Like, when I came home, that was in 2011. When I came home from that, I wouldn't say there was marked improvement. And it was not a result of medication. It was not a result of, someone like, all right, let's go talk about the deepest, darkest thing. I mean, it was sitting around other people like, yeah, I saw this thing. It was jacked up. And then kind of trying to apply that to real life. Okay, well, when's the last time you were in the mall and somebody pulled an AK out from under their skirt? Okay, you're right. That's not really a normal thing that happens. So maybe I'm just freaking out about it a little too much. And so I still struggled a lot. Not near as bad as it used to be. I mean, there was a point in my life where I was sleeping 20 hours a day. I would wake up and I would eat. I might interact with my children a little bit, and then I was sleeping again. Like, I was so depressed that I don't even know how I held a job during that. Oh yeah, I do. Cause I was working from home and I feel bad. I feel bad for that employer. I was working from home and I was very good at what I did. So I could complete my work very quickly and then just make it look like, like the little trick of putting a watch under your mouse so your screen always stays active. And then I just had like these speakers cranked all the way up. So that way, if someone IM'd me, it'd wake me up and I'd, roll over to my computer and, oh yeah, I'm still working on this. Here's step 5 in the process. Oh, wow, you got it done. Sweet. And I'd go right back to sleep. But there's still some things that they caught me, like if someone startled you, or I still went to bed with ghosts, let's say. I still carried a lot of shame and guilt over the things I participated in. And like it bothered, like I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. When I went to bed, it was a blank slate. So anywho, I
Now,
started looking into psychedelics.
now, real quick, did you experience night terrors or anything like that, or just difficulty sleeping?
There were times in the very beginning, there were times where I had a lot of nightmares. Kind of being back in that situation. And I don't know if this was the medication. I don't know if it was the constant use of marijuana, or if it was just a mental defense mechanism. But after that started, it was just a blank slate. I would go to sleep and just forget the entire 8 hours. So I did have night terrors early on, but then after that, I don't know if my psyche was just like, this is too much. It was a blank slate until many, many years. Like after 2017 ish, that I started having dreams again and could remember them when I woke up.
Wow. So after that, you were saying that you started to look into psychedelics.
Yeah, well, it started with really trying to find something more natural than these pills. I have no idea what's in these pills. I'm not making any claims. Nothing I'm saying has been evaluated by the FDA. And let's throw out some disclaimers there real quick. But what is this shit? It's like, well, and I'd been taking some pills at the VA for so long. Citalopram, I was on it for like 10 years, and it was a super high dosage. And then one day I go back to my shrink in Cheyenne, and they said, oh, we can't give you citalopram anymore. And I'd been through everything. I've taken absolutely every single SSRI that was on the market, at least in 2005 to 2009. I've been on everything. I've experienced all the side effects. Everything jacked me up. Citalopram was like the only thing that didn't completely destroy me with side effects. So I was pissed when they're like, we can't give you citalopram anymore. I'm like, dude, I'm not taking anything else because everything else makes my life so much worse.
Yeah.
They said, well, we found out citalopram is killing people's hearts. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, I don't want to take anything anymore. Like if this is just some science experiment and you're figuring out through veterans that this is hurting people, I don't want any part of it. So that's where it got me very interested in more natural medicines. Peanuts are surprisingly super high in natural serotonin. So, again, I'm not a doctor, but that's what I started doing. I just started eating a ton of nuts. Instead of taking these pills that were supposed to up my serotonin reuptake process or whatever that is, I just started eating the shit out of peanuts, like raw peanuts, not cooked. I can't tell you if it did anything, but it seemed to help. So I really started just chasing, well, there's got to be natural fixes. If we came out of the earth, if we are made of dust, there's got to be something here that's beneficial to us. And regardless of your, God created or you evolved, regardless your disposition, you wouldn't think that the universe or God would put us here to be completely defenseless against the kind of the things we're going to encounter in life. So there had to be other answers out there, right? And then, so I started, it was a documentary. It's called Neurons to Nirvana. And it highlighted some different medicines. The street drug ecstasy uses MDMA. Now that's obviously how it's used. It's not beneficial for people. It's not, healthy, so to speak. But the MDMA part, I was watching this documentary on how 100% of patients that were tested, and this was done in like the 60s, 100% of patients that were administered MDMA and then just laid down on a couch, covered their eyes and put some headphones on, sensory deprivation, 100% of them would get up and just start talking about their trauma. Because your brain dopamine levels are so high that it's like, shit, now is a good time to clean out the closet. So it starts processing all these traumatic things while the levels are artificially heightened. So that really got me interested in like, well, that'd be amazing to experience something like that. And my brother called. So because of the way my family dynamic was, we were never really close. We weren't taught that from our parents. They didn't learn it from theirs, not like trying to blame or judge or anything, but my
Certainly.
family and I weren't really close. We didn't really keep in contact. Maybe once a year, I'd talk to 2 or 3 of my siblings. There's some I haven't talked to since I was 17. But my brother calls and he says, "Hey, have you ever heard of ayahuasca?" So yeah, I've heard of it, and I think I just finished like hearing about it in this documentary that was talking about these psychedelics. And he said, "Okay, well, do you want to go try it? I'm gonna put together a trip for Peru." Okay, like I have no faith that this is gonna happen because me and my family would, we'd make plans to get together and then just not talk for 2 years. So it's like, sure, bro, you go ahead and get everything ready. I'll go get my passport. Okay. But tell me, because I'm not going to go waste money on a passport. And he called back like an hour later and was like, dude, everything's set up. Go get your passport, get a plane ticket. We're leaving in August. Okay. I mean, there it was. Like, now I'm going to go see if this DMT trip is going to help me with my PTSD.
So going into that, what was your brother's interest in it? And did he approach you to do this journey because of how you were feeling and what you were going through, or was this just kind of more of a, was he looking at it from like a recreational end, or what kind of spawned this?
um, it's funny. Ayahuasca is certainly not a recreational thing.
Yeah,
And what's
exactly.
fascinating about it is there are people that try to do it in that capacity and they have zero. It's like the medicine will not respond to them at all. They don't have
Mm,
visions. They don't feel sick. They feel nothing if you're going to do it as a party. It's very interesting how there's very much so an intelligence with this medicine.
mm,
Um, as far as I know, he wanted to heal from his own family trauma.
mm,
He's my older brother, so he got the physical abuse a lot more than I did. And it was, from the stories I've heard, him and my oldest brother, they were kind of beat on a daily basis. So he had a lot of anger, a lot of trauma that he wanted to heal. He had reached out. He had mentioned that he had reached out because he kind of knew I was struggling a lot with the kind of things I experienced, and he had obviously seen the transformation in me. Here's a
mm.
kid that wouldn't talk bad about someone and now is struggling to not like beat up his boss, right? And it's just, these are not the same people. So from what he tells me, or from what he told me, that was part of the motivation for setting this trip up.
Nice. So there was good purpose and intention behind it,
Yes.
which I think is key to any of the treatments, whether it's a psychedelic, even just going into therapy, EMDR, whatever you decide your path is, having that intention and that purpose drive behind it to do actual good change. Because if you just go into it kind of meh, like
That's the
you're not
result
going
you're
to
going to
find
get.
anything from it. Yeah,
Meh. Yeah.
exactly.
That's what the universe is going to give back. I mean, we hear these principles and everything in what everyone talks about, that the work you put in is what you're going to get out. And it's very true. That is
Yep.
one of the, thank you for saying that, because
Yeah.
with any medicine, like, people get, like I said, the ecstasy, it gets a bad rap, right? Well, sure. It's used in a way where people are not respecting it for what it's for. It's, let's go party and just have this very meaningless experience, so to speak. So yeah, you get all these kind of twisted results. People who, try psychedelics in somebody's basement in the middle of the city and they're having a bad day. They're like, man, I saw the craziest things ever. Well, of course you did. What was your intent going in? You were trying to escape life in a terrible situation. You brought it with you,
Yep.
right? So what is it that you're taking into this experience that, and it doesn't have to, again, like you said, it was intention. I want to heal from this.
Mm.
That's what you're going to get out of there. If you're very stern on your intention, it changes a lot. It changes a lot about how we interact with life.
Absolutely. And very much one of the things that I learned was you can't focus on that trauma. That can't be your intention. Your intention can't be, I'm going to go sit down and do this. And I'm going to think about all the horrible shit that I've been through and seen and that I can't wash away in hopes that that's going to wash it away. You have to go in and just not even think about it. Think about where you want to be and just kind of project that positive intention of the existence you want in life, what you perceive your future, not the shit storm that you're currently in.
This is what you're saying is very true. And I don't mean to laugh at you. I'm
No,
laughing
you're good.
simply because on ayahuasca, that was kind of my intent to go down there and just be like, I want to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be healed of this. I don't want to carry ghosts with me anymore. I don't want to beat myself up over this stuff. I don't want to, live in shame, so to speak. But I had to, like, part of that process, I had to relive it. And
Mm-hmm.
I relived it from every angle in every scenario. And then I relived scenarios that I was never even involved in. I mean, the night I processed my war trauma, I felt like I was gone for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to describe the entire vision, but I had to see what man was. I was beating myself up for what men naturally do to each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I relive my war trauma. I relive all these battles in the past. That was like, I like Quantum Leap. You remember that show where Scott Bakula, he's like jumping from life to life and he has to
Yep.
experience these life. It was like that, but I was jumping through time, experiencing battles. So, I'm riding in on a horse and then I'm shooting a bow and then I'm like using a spear in ancient Greece. And then, I'm like in the desert fighting with a sword. But it goes all the way back to where there's these two cavemen and one of them just like smashes the other one in the head with a rock. And so that just gave me the sense that that's what man is, right? And not necessarily every man is violent, but that's what we are capable of. And if you take anger, violence, hatred, if you take it all the way down the road, that's exactly where it goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
To where men pick up arms against other men and cause harm.
Yep.
So, um, yeah, sometimes there's absolutely something to be said for, we sometimes we're broken because we think we're broken, so to speak. Um, and even myself right now, like sometimes I struggle with, because I know I had to go through it
Mm-hmm.
to finally get over something. I really had to look at it because there was something I was missing. I didn't want to accept that I could be that person. I don't get in fights. I don't swing. I don't throw the first punch. I don't, if I can avoid violence, I will. So I'm not that guy. And I use the excuse of, well, I was following orders or I was, doing what I was told. And that wasn't me. But it made it that experience, the medicine, what it showed me was that's exactly what you are. That is exactly what you are. But moreover, you get to control that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what man's capable of, where our disagreements will lead if we continue down that path. So what are you going to do about it? Right? Like, stop hiding from it, so to speak.
Yeah.
How are you going to use what you experienced to make a better world? Or how can you honor the people that perished in this going forward? And it's not by hiding. It's not by, saying like, oh gosh, that I couldn't do those things, or that wasn't me, or, trying to make excuses for things, so to speak. It's you have acceptance. Fuck. It is acceptance of that's exactly what happened. But how are you going to take that lesson and use it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think it very much so. Everything in our life shows up to teach us something. Right? We can learn from absolutely even if someone walks up and they just stomp on your shoe and run away, right? And you're like, man, what an asshole. Well, what's the lesson there? Well, I don't want to be that. I'm not that person, right? So
Exactly.
in even little ways, it's like God is kind of always showing us what we are. And sometimes we have to accept things, but not in the sense that without shame, so to speak. And what I mean by that, it's hard to explain. It's like, you're going to do things in your life. Everyone has to learn, whatever path you're on, you're going to have to learn lessons of how to be a better person, a better version of yourself, so to speak. And sometimes to learn that, you have to experience something that's very negative, very hard, very shocking and jarring to really see like what is available in this universe. Right. And sometimes we run from that. Like a lot of the times we run from that because it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant to sit there and experience. It's not pleasant to think about. It's not pleasant to go through. But in some ways it's still teaching us this is how you make a better version of yourself.
Absolutely. I think some of that biggest growth that I experienced in my process and journey came from dealing with the really hard stuff that I didn't want to talk about, that I didn't want to relive, that I didn't want to process, that it seemed so much easier to just push that stuff in the corner and bury it than to let it
Yes.
out into the light. But letting it into the light, into full view, and just actually dealing with it just cleared all the bullshit out. And that's where the growth comes in, where suddenly, I mean, it is that literal weight being taken off of you is what it feels like. And that you just feel like you
Yes.
can breathe again, and you're just like, but it was a heavy thing to take care of.
Mm-hmm. It's like, if I were to walk up to you, and this is a weird example, but I put a spear in you,
Mm,
right? So I stick a spear in you and you're like, I don't want to deal with that. So you just go on about your day. You've
yeah.
got the spear hanging out of you and you're like, okay, people are looking at you funny and you're like, it's fine. It's like, it'll heal up because we don't want to have to pull that out. Right. It's
Mm,
like, okay, let's examine what's actually going on here. We don't want to look at it. But when you finally do, not only is it like, oh, okay, now I'm not so worried, and I've got a cool fucking spear.
yeah.
Like that's the other part of it, is that trauma is empowering once you take that lesson and once you realize that you don't have to carry it with you, but you still get to carry it with you.
Mm,
Right? It's not weighing you down. Now you've learned something. Now
mm,
you have a podcast where you're helping other people with PTSD. Like, dude, free your chains. So now you're using it to go help others
yep.
break their chains, so to speak. And that's where that's where it becomes exciting. I know, like
Yeah.
when I talk to people about PTSD, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. They're like, how the fuck? What? It's like, no, just wait. When you get through this, you're gonna love it. I swear. And that's hard to see when I spent 15 years in the VA, just hating my life, hating everyone, hating everything. I don't know how the fuck I'm not dead for the times I've tried several times to just be like, all right, I'm clocking
Mm,
out of this show. It never happened.
yep.
And now it's like, you don't have to stay there. You
Mm,
don't have to stay there. You got a spear in you, you got an arrow in your back, and you got a sword in your side. I promise you, we're going to take these things out, and then you're going to be like freaking Rambo with all the weapons.
yep. It is an amazing thing, because I would have never guessed that's how it would feel. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, well, shit, I'm wearing this forever. This is it. This is me. I got this label, and to remove those things and to process is just, it's a type of liberation that I would never expected, and the growth from it, because I would have never. I mean, we met about, I don't know, 7, 8 months ago, probably was when we first started interacting, and like that was uncomfortable for me to just start posting videos on social media. I'm like, fuck this noise, that's not me. And it wasn't until I did that interview with Nick Hoffer, and he's like, hey, you got to stop saying that, because the things that you're saying you want to do, yeah, guess what, this is you. And I
Right.
was just like, yeah. But now I'm just like, well, fuck, let's do this, let's go all in on it. I want to help people. I'm just learning to transition into another way, much like yourself. And that's where that growth comes in. Because I think anybody who actually truly knew what I was going through when I started this, which very, very few people did, and even those that did didn't really understand it.
Sure.
to see where I'm at now, I mean, like they'd say they don't even know me.
Hmm. And it really is that freeing moment. I had
Mhm.
part of my experience while on psychedelics was just, I was sitting before this, there was this huge mountain in front of me, and I love using this analogy now, and I was so fucking tired. I was so tired. And I knew in my mind, I had the idea that I had to walk up this mountain. And I'm like, dude, I can't, I can't move my feet. Um, a lot of people will interact with the spirit of this medicine. They, they refer to her as Mother Ayahuasca. People see her as kind of all these different representations. She looked like the tree lady from Pocahontas, but she walked up, and after I'd kind of gone through this entire experience of war, so to speak, and it was like this giant backpack got freaking pulled off my back and set down, and it was all this weight was gone, and it's like, wow, I could run up 10 of these mountains now, because you're not carrying that, whatever feeling it is, right? I'm not trying to say it's specific to anything. Everyone has their own version of trauma, whether it's shame, guilt, hurt, whatever the emotion is that you're carrying with you. Like you said, when you are finally able to, like, go snap, now I understand why that happened, and now it's not so scary, and it's not so attached, and I'm not afraid of it. It's like someone took a backpack full of rocks off your back, and
Yeah.
it's like, man, I can go so far now.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And so for you, with that journey, so you went down and you were there for about a week
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah, you spend a week in the jungle, and it depends on. There's a lot of different resorts, retreats that offer ayahuasca. There's one in Florida. It's like you can do 2 days, but they run 60 people through. Um, I don't recommend. The smaller the group, the better.
more
So
intimate, not so chaotic, I would assume.
yes, and these can be very powerful experiences, and other people's experiences can influence yours. So if you've got a big group, and that becomes a nightmare to kind of handle too, right? Like
Mm.
we had um, two people that were like the helpers. There were two shaman who were administering the medicine, doing the singing, the ceremony. Two people that were also helping people kind of get to the bathroom, get back in the maloka, which is the little round room where ceremonies held. Um, but yeah, the retreat center we went to, it was a week in the Amazon jungle, and you had 5 ceremonies. So you did a few ceremonies, took a break, did a few more ceremonies. We got exposed to other medicines. That's where I learned Cambo the first time. I had this weird skin disease. The VA was like, we don't know what that is. They cut me open, did all these tests, made up some words, offered me a subscription plan to some pills. And then the first time I did Cambo in the jungle, all these spots went away and they've never been back. So, um, that changed my mind on a lot. Like after I
Yeah.
came back from Peru that first time, it was like, wow, I don't have to be stuck in places. I don't have to be, confined, so to speak, by my trauma. I can let all that shit go. I can, dump out all the pills, be done with all that.
Nice. That's awesome. So, what was the changes that you noticed in the days, weeks, months, years following that experience in the jungle?
Well, it was sorry. I was gonna say it was literally overnight. There were after that the inpatient program I went to in 2011. After that helped a lot of symptoms. Like I wasn't as fighty. I wasn't as, I could tolerate being in a line. I could tolerate, crowds, so to speak. But there were a lot of other little things, like I still wanted to keep my back to a wall at a restaurant. I was always, hyper vigilant, still watching for all the exits, making escape plans,
Yep.
watching all that crap, all the hypervigilance. When I came back from Peru, it was gone. Like I could walk into a restaurant and sit right there in the middle and not care. And it was interesting because there was a moment where like I didn't even realize I was doing this. My wife and I had gone somewhere to eat, and then the lady said, is this okay? And I was like, yeah, sure. I sat down at this table in the middle of the restaurant. It's like a Chili's or something. So they got the little tables in the middle of the walkway. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I sat in the chair, and my wife is just like looking at me like, are you okay? And what's going on? She's like, you don't want a booth against the wall? Oh, oh, wow. And it's just like, I didn't even notice that these were things I wasn't even worried about anymore.
Mm.
So there were a lot of changes that were very immediate. Just, yeah, those feelings of needing to protect myself, so to speak, those were still there, but a lot of things changed overnight with, I don't know how to describe it. This always sounds weird when I talk about this, but there are lessons that take a long time to integrate.
Mm.
So, I knew that, as an example, when I got over my PTSD, I had to accept that I had participated in combat. Every time I pulled the trigger, I made that conscious decision. People will say, oh, well, gosh, they would have thrown you in jail and you would have gotten discharged and blah, blah, blah. That's correct. I still had the choice, right? I had the choice to either pull the trigger or go sit in a jail cell. It was still my choice, right? So I had to accept that. But then there was still a part of me that's like, I'm not that guy, right? I'm not the violent guy. I'm not the guy that does harm, yada, yada, yada. So I was still running from myself in many ways. I was running from that very masculine, very dangerous part of me that I just wasn't. And so I was kind of relieved of all the traumatic stuff about it, but I was still hiding from myself. And that started to show in the ways I would interact, because I would not be confrontational. If you walked over and, kind of start kicking me in the foot, I'd be like, okay, pal, I was still scared to go there, so to speak. So over the next couple of years, those lessons were also kind of slowly brought to my attention. So there's things that kind of instantly change for you.
Mm.
And then there's other things that it's, flower has to bloom very slowly. And it's not just like, okay, here's all the ways your psyche has changed. Now go. So I just got back in January 26th, I want to say, from another trip down to Peru. And I was pretty solid on, the things I had seen, what they meant. I was in the shower yesterday and something just totally made sense of something I saw when I was down in Peru, and then how it applies to my daily life now. And so it's kind of this constant, you get like all this information and then it's like, okay, here's a bunch of info to unpack until you come back. And it kind of, I think there was oh my gosh, there was this vision I had on the third night. So this was not related to my PTSD. But there was this vision I had on the third night. I didn't understand it until a week before I went. So like the second week of January, I didn't understand it until that week. I was talking to my brother and it just kind of all clicked, so there's a lot of lessons a lot of things that changed immediately. Sorry, that was a really long answer to your question.
No, you're
a lot of
good.
things that changed immediately, a lot of things that were still took a lot of time to process and kind of integrate.
Yeah, definitely. So there's just those downloads just keep coming, sometimes years later.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And it's kind of interesting because the brain is such an interesting thing in our cells and how our bodies function and process, where I think we're really just still on the cusp of knowing how all that truly works on that cellular level. But
Sure.
yeah, it is a remarkable thing how that all works, and it is remarkable that there are all these different options out there, ayahuasca being one of them, and what that can do for anybody really. And I know that ayahuasca to many is, I mean, it's like going to church and taking sacrament to some. Like it is so sacred that it's they don't even want to talk about it with other people. So I appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
It's still held in high regard, and I would very much so advocate that any medicine show respect for everything.
Mm.
100%. this little scar I got on my eye was in some way, I feel, a hard lesson in respect for that medicine. And I'm not gonna, that's a very long story, but I think there's a lot that can, like you were talking about earlier, your intention. If we go into things just kind of, oh, that's not going to work. Oh, that's stupid. Oh, this is silly. Almost everything is very sacred. Did you know that mushrooms, the psilocybin in mushrooms was not shared? This is also another fascinating little anecdote. It was not shared until, however many years ago, where someone in this tribe, this had given it to this lady to tell her how this was used and how they used it. So it was very sacred to them. The psychedelic mushrooms were not as commonplace. You couldn't find them unless you knew what tribe grew these and did the ceremonies and all that fun stuff. What's fascinating is that around the very same time, all around the planet, there were a lot of different practitioners who got the message, so to speak, from their respective medicines, gods, whatever it is. Ayahuasca was the same way. Ayahuasca used to be you weren't allowed to drink it. Let's say you yourself wanted to go down and do ayahuasca. Well, you couldn't because you weren't a member of the tribe. But let's say you were, and you went to the shaman, you weren't allowed to drink it. It was so sacred. Only the shaman were allowed to drink it. And then they would have experiences for you and kind of try and interpret these things for the medicine, so to speak. And so it's fascinating. There was those two. And then one other thing this guy I had met down there was telling me, but around the same time, all these medicines started, hey, you need to go share this now. It's time for people to heal.
Yeah, we're definitely on the cusp of some amazing things in the psychedelic realm when it comes to treatment of PTSD
Oh yeah.
and other anxiety, depression, disorders. Even they're doing some treatment with alcohol abuse and drug abuse too,
Oh,
for some
sure.
of the psychedelics and having really good effects, really positive
Absolutely.
outcomes. So it's really a wonderful thing to see, and that it's starting to become more open and destigmatized, because I know certainly for me initially I was like, oh, psychedelics, like what, am I in high school again? Like
Right.
we're just gonna go
Sure.
party? Because that's what it felt like. Just even talking about it seemed like such a silly thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then to really reframe it that, like, no, you're not going to party, you're not going to get high. Like there's a purpose behind this, and it's a very serious thing. Um,
Yes.
once that understanding occurs, that's an integral part of that healing journey, because I don't think that any of it would work like you were talking with the ayahuasca, and that you might have some sort of effect. The psychedelics may have an effect on you, but they're not going to have the intended effect if it's not with that purpose and with the true understanding of what you're actually using that medicine for.
Absolutely. I mean, like, think of it as any tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you take a hammer and just start throwing it around, are you going to build a house?
Yeah.
No. If you're very intentional and you are very like, this is what I'm going to do with this, it changes everything. Right? And I was very similar. I knew a lot of the kids in high school that were the druggies. They would use, they do mushrooms, acid, all the things. And man, when these kids came to school and they're talking about, like, I see particles and there's fairies all around, you're just like, dude, you're an idiot. Like, I'm never touching that stuff. Why would I touch a psychedelic if it's just
Yeah.
going to make me hallucinate and see crap that's not there? Um, which is quite interesting now how my understanding on that has changed. But there was no
Yeah.
intention behind it,
Yeah.
right? And to where now I understand, like, any of these medicines, whether it's LSD, psilocybin, DMT, and there's all kinds of different versions of DMT.
Mm.
Man, it really is the intention you put in. You can ask a question and the answers are never what you expect. So
Mm-hmm.
people, they want to see things like, oh, I'm going to ask it to show me a blue car and it's going to show me a blue car. Like, wrong. It's probably going to put you inside a red car and drive you through a mountain and then under an ocean and then pop out into the sun. And I don't know what that means, but it's going to mean something special to you to get to the point of it. So that's what I mean by, like, there's still a lot of, hey, like, what did that mean kind
Mm,
of to it? But as long as you're going into it with the intention of, this isn't a game, this isn't something I'm doing for fun. Like, I'm using this tool to figure something out, figure
mm,
out why it is that I'm stuck on this, or try and examine that in my life and heal whatever it may be. Control your surroundings. Again, don't do this in the middle of a rave. That's a terrible idea.
yeah,
Get out in nature, have someone there to get you water, get you to the bathroom, and just kind of take care of you. And absolutely, these can be very, very powerful medicines for freeing your mind of those self-limiting thoughts, the traumas, the things it likes to hang on to protect us, but still hang on to.
yep, definitely. And with all those options out there, and there's plenty of experts out there and information out there to get with the right people and find the solution that's right for you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty thankful that we are in the times that we're in because, if I had to experience this, 20 years ago, I don't know that the outcome would have been the same just because
Sure.
the what we know now is so vastly different than what we knew 20 years ago. And some of the stuff that we did know, like even with MDMA, it was on such lockdown because of the war on drugs. And that's like, we won't get into the politics of that, but really like they had already done a lot of those studies.
Yep.
And but then because of the war on drugs, they just got all that got locked down. It was like no more, we're done. And now we're finally coming back into an era where we're saying, well, let's look at these things again. And I'm thankful for that because I think that there are so many wonderful options out there. And I talk about it a lot that there is no one tool that's perfect for everybody. And
Right.
sometimes it's multiple tools. I continue to learn and grow and explore different treatments even though I'm in a really good spot, but just because I want to have experiences so that I can have insights that might be valuable to help other people.
Sure. And to your point, though, also is I know that ayahuasca and psychedelics, they're not for everyone. Not,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some people that have kind of a reservation. And absolutely, I think you went to Jen, her breathwork class,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you had a very good experience with
Yes.
that, because even through our breath, like, our body naturally produces DMT.
Mm-hmm.
So through our breath, you can start activating some of those same systems
Mm-hmm.
that will trigger this kind of healing, trigger these things to be brought up, trigger the emotions to come out. The psychedelics are just, you have to stay there for a while, so to speak, right? But if
Yeah.
you're not ready for that, there's tons of other ways
Yeah.
to get the same benefit, and maybe just, dip your feet in the pool, so to speak. Um, and as I was talking to Jen, right, you can stay in breath work for hours and you can go really
Mm-hmm.
deep, right?
Yep.
So there's all kinds of tools,
Absolutely.
to start chipping away at all this crap that we kind of hang on and beat ourselves up with. Oh man, why do I got this spear? Like, bro, take that spear out. It's your best weapon. It's your
Yep.
best weapon.
Absolutely. So Aaron, what message do you have for anybody that's struggling right now and that might be on the fence or is just unsure of maybe innately they know that something's wrong, but they're unsure of getting help. They're worried about the stigmas associated with PTSD and those sort of things.
First off, everyone's got it in some way, so to speak. Don't ever be afraid to be broken, if you're around people that are making you feel bad about that, you're around the wrong people. um
Absolutely.
if if you want to heal from, if something bad happened in your bad happened in your life, something very traumatic, the best thing I can tell you is to go find someone who's been through something similar and talk about it, right? Like, if you can get in a private scenario where it's you and a couple people who have been through a very similar experience, and you're able to authentically share and express your emotions about that experience, that can go a long way, right? Without seeking anyone's, quote unquote help.
Mm,
Um, just having people who have been through a similar experience is very healing. Um, but if you're wanting to try it, I know it's very scary, and there's been many things that I've been afraid of doing. And in this weird way, I'm so thankful I did. I'm so thankful I did. And that has nothing to do with, flying to Peru and doing ayahuasca. That is, if there's something that you feel you need to do to heal yourself or become a better version of yourself, don't ever let fear stop you. Do whatever you can. If it's breath work, hanging out with your friends, finding groups, whatever, start taking those steps, because I promise you're going to feel so much better when you can lift that weight off of you. Life gets pretty fun. It gets, it's still hard. It's always going to be hard. There's always going to be things popping up, but it is different.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love that. Yeah, there is no other way to get better other than taking action, and certainly hope that everybody does take action. So Aaron, if people wanted to reach out to you and kind of get more information or about what you do with your coaching group, or just experiences with PTSD, getting help, anything that they might want to do, how's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is probably on Instagram. I'm a lot more responsive on Instagram or Facebook, but Instagram at Souls on Fire Coaching. You can send me an email, Aaron@soulsonfire.com, hit up my website, contact me, soulsonfire.com. But Instagram's probably the best. I'm most responsive on Instagram these days, but yeah, reach out. Even if I can't help you, I know a lot of people that potentially can. So if I can't help you, I can point you in the right direction to start taking those rocks off your back. Start cleaning out that closet. Stop, screaming at Pandora's box once a week and then going and feeling like shit and taking pills for the rest of the week because of it. Stop all that madness.
Yep.
Let's heal.
Yep. Let's heal and get better and be the best version of ourselves.
Yes.
And I'll put your contact information in the show notes as well, so people can find you. And any final thoughts?
No, sir. Just keep kicking ass. Thank you for having me on here.
Absolutely.
Like you said, I noticed you were very standoffish, right? Like when we first met, and now, dude, you're all over Instagram. You're always in my feed. I don't always like things. I'm more of an internet lurker, but it's really been cool to see you grow, and just, you're a lot brighter. You're
awesome. Thank you.
You're so much brighter.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And, I'm grateful for what you do. Thank you for your service to this country and for coming on here and being open and vulnerable to tell your story. The hope is always that you and I both know there's more people out there that have dealt with these things and struggled. And the hope is that y'all will get help, that you'll get off the fence, get out there and just commit to getting help and be intentional with that journey to healing and self-improvement. And Aaron's a great example of that. And what he's done in his life and how much improvement he's seen in leaps and bounds. And certainly grateful for that and to have you around.
Likewise. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, certainly. But yeah, so if you want to reach out to him, I'll post his Instagram and his website and email on the show notes. And next week we'll do it all again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and appreciate it again, Aaron. Take care.
Thanks for having me on. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.